The mystery of the Nephilim has always intrigued Bible scholars and readers. Who were these giants mentioned in Genesis 6? The Bible describes the Nephilim as powerful and towering beings, but their origin is shrouded in mystery and controversy. To understand who they really were, we need to look at the biblical account and the spiritual context in which they emerged. These giants were not just a race of strong men, they represented something much darker and more complex. The Nephilim are described as the result of the union between the sons of God and the daughters of men. But who are these sons of God? Many scholars believe that this expression refers to fallen angels, spiritual beings who abandoned their heavenly place to engage with humanity in an illicit manner. This act of rebellion resulted in the creation of a hybrid race that threatened to corrupt God's divine plan for humanity. These angels, by defying God's orders, not only altered the course of human history but also attracted severe consequences for themselves. But why did these fallen angels choose to descend to earth and interact with humans? The Bible does not give us a direct answer, but we can infer that these beings, led by Satan, intended to frustrate God's plan for human redemption. Knowing that the Messiah would come through the human lineage, these fallen angels may have attempted to corrupt the race so that the divine promise could not be fulfilled. This theory explains why God was so angered by the situation that he decided to destroy the earth with a flood. The presence of the Nephilim on earth was such a great offense that God decided to reverse the course of creation. The earth, which was supposed to reflect divine goodness, had become a place of chaos and disorder. The flood was God's response to eliminate this corruption and preserve the purity of the human lineage. However, despite the destruction of the Nephilim during the flood, evidence indicates that their influence persisted, appearing again in the land of Canaan and other regions after the flood. Therefore, when we examine the origin of the Nephilim, we see that they are more than just ancient giants. They represent a deep and ongoing spiritual battle between good and evil. These beings, products of a celestial rebellion, posed one of the greatest challenges to the purity and divine purpose for humanity. But even in the midst of this darkness, God's plan prevailed, showing that no matter how powerful the forces of evil may seem, they can never defeat divine power and justice. The fall of the angels, described in texts like Genesis 6 and Jude 1 verse 6, had devastating consequences for humanity. These sons of God, who abandoned their designated place in heaven, descended to earth with a dark purpose, to interact with the daughters of men in a forbidden way. This act of rebellion gave birth to the Nephilim, a race of giants that not only defied God's orders but also threatened to corrupt the human lineage. These fallen angels, by materializing in human forms, crossed the boundaries set by God. Their union with human women was a grave transgression that resulted in the birth of beings who combined the physical strength of men with the corrupted spiritual nature of fallen angels. The Nephilim were, therefore, an aberration in divine creation, powerful and violent beings that contributed to the rapid moral decay of humanity before the flood. But why did these fallen angels choose to act this way? It is believed that their goal was to prevent the fulfillment of God's promise of a Savior. Knowing that the Messiah would come through the lineage of Eve, these angels tried to corrupt the human race so that God's promise could not be realized. This act of corruption was so severe that God decided to intervene directly, bringing the flood to purify the earth and eliminate this malignant influence. The consequences for these fallen angels were severe. The book of Jude mentions that these angels were chained in eternal darkness, awaiting the day of final judgment. This shows that although they managed to cause great destruction on earth, they did not escape God's judgment. Their rebellion serves as a warning about the dangers of disobeying God's orders and trying to subvert His plans. The Nephilim, as a result of this forbidden union, are a somber reminder of the spiritual battle that takes place behind the scenes of human history. They are not just mythological figures or characters from ancient legends but evidence of a real spiritual war that continues to this day. The fall of these angels and the creation of the Nephilim show how far evil can go in trying to destroy God's purposes, but they also highlight the unwavering justice and power of God to protect His divine plan. Before the flood, the presence of the Nephilim brought a significant increase in wickedness on earth. The Bible describes a humanity already inclined to sin, which was further corrupted by the influence of these giants. Violence and perversity spread rapidly, and the earth, which was supposed to be a reflection of divine goodness, became a place of chaos and disorder. The Nephilim were not only physically imposing, but their existence was a direct affront to God's plan for creation. The flood, then, was God's response to this rampant corruption. The book of Genesis shows us that God was deeply grieved by the state of the world, to the point of deciding to destroy everything He had created. The flood was a necessary purification, eliminating not only the Nephilim but all the wickedness they helped spread. However, it is important to note that this divine intervention was also an opportunity for a fresh start, preserving Noah's lineage to ensure the continuity of the plan of salvation. Even after the flood, the influence of the Nephilim did not disappear completely. The Bible mentions the presence of giants in the land of Canaan, where the Israelites encountered descendants of the Nephilim, such as the Anakim. These accounts suggest that, in some way, the lineage of these beings continued, challenging the people of God on their journey to take possession of the promised land. These battles against the descendants of the Nephilim were not only physical but also spiritual, representing the ongoing struggle between good and evil. The persistence of the Nephilim's influence after the flood reminds us that malignant forces continue to operate in the world, even after great acts of divine intervention. The Israelites, led by figures like Joshua and David, had to face these giants, trusting in God's promise to secure victory. This teaches us that, even in the face of gigantic challenges, faith and obedience to God are essential to overcome any obstacle. The story of the Nephilim, both before and after the flood, serves as a powerful reminder of the ongoing spiritual battle. These giants, symbols of corruption and rebellion, were defeated by divine justice. However, the struggle against evil continues, requiring from us the same faith and determination that guided the great biblical leaders in their battles. The influence of the Nephilim may have been crushed, but the need for spiritual vigilance remains as relevant today as it was in those ancient times. The story of the Nephilim is not just an ancient tale, it brings profound lessons that we can apply in our lives today. These beings, the result of celestial transgression, show us the dangers of straying from God's plans and the consequences that this can bring. The corruption they introduced on earth serves as a warning about the influence of malignant spiritual forces that still operate in the world. Just as God intervened in the past to protect humanity from the corruption of the Nephilim, He continues to protect us today. But this protection requires that we be aware of the spiritual battles around us and that we take active steps to strengthen our faith. We must arm ourselves with the armor of God, as described in Ephesians 6 verses 10 to 18, to resist the enemy's schemes and stand firm in faith. Subscribe to the Divine Prosperity channel to continue exploring these biblical mysteries and learning how to apply these teachings in your life. By subscribing, you will have access to more content that will strengthen your faith and give you the tools to face daily spiritual battles. Leave your like if you want to continue growing in the knowledge of the Scriptures and understanding God's divine plan for humanity. Also, share this video with friends and family so they too can learn about the hidden truths in the Bible. The story of the Nephilim may seem distant, but its lessons are extremely relevant to us today. We need to be united in the search for understanding and in the fight against the negative influences that try to lead us away from God's path. Remember, the story of the Nephilim shows us that, no matter how powerful the forces against us may be, God is greater. He guides us and empowers us to overcome any obstacle, no matter how impossible it may seem. Our faith in God must be unshakable, just as that of the great biblical heroes who faced their own giants. When the Israelites approached the Promised Land, they faced a terrifying challenge: the descendants of the Nephilim, known as the Anakim. These giants, with their imposing stature and immense strength, were feared by all. The mere sight of these giants struck fear into the hearts of the Israelites, to the point that some spies returned discouraged, believing it would be impossible to overcome such power. However, in the midst of fear and doubt, two men stood out, Joshua and Caleb. They were not intimidated by the Anakim's stature because they knew that God was with Israel. While others saw invincible giants, Joshua and Caleb saw God's promise and the certainty of victory. They trusted in God and encouraged the people to move forward, believing that with God, they could conquer the land. These battles against the descendants of the Nephilim teach us that faith is the most powerful weapon we have against challenges that seem insurmountable. The Israelites, despite their initial doubts, were empowered by God to defeat the giants and take possession of the promised land. This shows us that when we trust in God, He gives us the strength we need to overcome any obstacle, no matter how great. The victory over the Anakim was more than just a territorial conquest. It was a confirmation that God fulfills His promises. What seemed impossible to human eyes became reality through faith and obedience. Joshua, Caleb, and the people of Israel show us that trust in God is fundamental to overcoming the toughest battles in life, whether they are physical, emotional, or spiritual. These lessons are not limited to the past. Today, just like the Israelites, we face our own giants, problems, fears, and challenges that seem insurmountable. But the story of the Israelites reminds us that, with faith, we can overcome any giant that arises in our path. God is faithful and powerful to guide us in every battle, ensuring that with Him, we will always emerge victorious. The story of the Nephilim, though ancient, reflects a spiritual reality that is still very present in our lives today. Just as these giants attempted to corrupt humanity, malignant spiritual forces continue trying to lead us away from God's path. The struggle between good and evil, so evident in the story of the Nephilim, is a battle that we all face daily in our choices and actions. These biblical accounts teach us the importance of being alert and vigilant to the negative influences that can lead us away from God. Temptation and corruption are not things of the past. They are realities that we still need to face with firmness and determination. The story of the Nephilim warns us of the dangers of yielding to evil influences and encourages us to keep our faith unshakable in God. The Bible gives us the tools to fight these spiritual forces through the armor of God. In Ephesians 6, we are instructed to arm ourselves with truth, righteousness, the gospel of peace, faith, salvation, and the Word of God. These are the weapons we need to face spiritual battles and remain firm against the enemy's schemes, just as the Israelites faced and defeated their giants. Applying these principles in our lives means living according to the teachings of Christ and resisting the temptations that surround us. Just as the Nephilim were a real threat to God's plan, today's temptations and challenges can also lead us away from our divine purpose. But with faith in God's protection, we can overcome any adversity and keep our path firmly toward salvation. The story of the Nephilim, therefore, is not just about giants of the past. It is a powerful metaphor for the spiritual battle we face every day. With God by our side, we can defeat any giant, overcome any temptation, and live a life that honors the divine purpose He has for each of us. Confidence in God, just as it was for Joshua, Caleb, and so many others, is the key to spiritual victory. The legacy of the Nephilim, despite their physical destruction, continues to live on in their representation of the ongoing battle between good and evil. These giants were more than just towering beings. They symbolized corruption and rebellion against God's plans. Even after the flood, the forces of evil did not disappear, and humanity still struggles against influences that try to lead us away from the divine path. The battle that began with the fall of angels and the creation of the Nephilim is a battle that continues in our lives. Each of us faces personal giants, challenges, temptations, fears, that, at first glance, seem insurmountable. But the biblical story teaches us that just as God empowered His people to defeat the Nephilim, He also empowers us to overcome the challenges we face today. Just as Joshua and Caleb trusted in God to defeat the giants in the Promised Land, we too must trust in God's strength and power to overcome our own giants. The victory over the Nephilim was not just a physical victory, but a spiritual victory that showed God's power over any force that opposes him. This same trust and faith are essential for us as we face our daily battles. The story of the Nephilim reminds us that despite the difficulties and challenges we may face, God is faithful and powerful to guide and protect us. He does not leave us alone in our struggles. He is with us, giving us the strength and courage to move forward. The victory over the Nephilim is a guarantee that with God, we can win any battle, no matter how difficult it may seem. So, as we face our own giants, let us remember the legacy of the Nephilim, a reminder that no matter the size of the challenge, God's power is infinitely greater. With faith, obedience, and trust in God, we can overcome any obstacle and continue to live according to the divine plan He has for each of us.